Hello, good morning. A happy Tuesday to you. I hope your week is off to a great start. And here you have taken a moment for some Tuesday Tea-ology. Very glad to have you. Drinking today, continuing the Wizard Tea Discovery Collection. And I am discovering afternoon tea. So once again, you see that I'm not doing it right. It's 10:13 in the morning and I'm drinking afternoon tea. But it is, they say, our signature blend of black and jasmine tea, expertly balanced with flavors of bergamot. Well, yeah, I mean, you make the tea, you have to be an expert, right? So it's a sort of green tea, Earl Grey kind of combo. It's good. It is interesting having kind of the touch of jasmine and the Earl Grey. It's good. I like it. Yeah, I'm not immediately moving it to the top of the list, but it is an interesting blend. So, you get the chance, try afternoon tea. You don't have the chance, you come by, I'll make you a cup. But in the meantime, we will move on to more important things, talking about theology, about the doctrine of creation. And that is our starting point for understanding the world. Well, God is our starting point for understanding it all. And then for understanding the world, we look at it as God's creation. And we've spent a few weeks talking about creation in general, what it shows us about God, His power and wisdom, about the beauty and the wonder of creation, about the order of creation, and therefore that sin involves, at least in some cases, a sort of disordering, an attack on God's order, and sometimes that is very deliberate. Especially in our time and whatnot, there's been an attack on order, an attempt to go back to chaos and remold things as we want to, and we fail because our words do not have the power that God's word has. But God created things orderly and God created things good. And there was, throughout the creation account, we have a repetition of God seeing it and it was good. Over and over again, we see that. But after we hear that God created all of the beasts that live upon the land, and the livestock and the creeping things and so on. And we hear that God saw that it was good. We do not then hear the refrain that usually ends the creation day, and there was evening and there was morning, in this case the sixth day. That is put off for a considerable space while it now turns to the creation of mankind. And just that distinction is worth noting, that mankind is not simply included with the animals that live upon the earth, with the beasts that crawl and so on. And that tempers our understanding of the relationship of human beings to the animal world. Of course, we have a strong connection with the animal world. We too are creatures that live on the face of the earth, and we have the same creator. And we may, depending on the animal, we have more or less similarities. Some of them have four limbs like us, and heads that more or less resemble ours, whatnot. And we have some hair where many of them have more, but some don't, of course. Have hair like we do. You, you, and So there are these similarities, but also dissimilarities. But there is a fundamental disjunction. That's what I'm getting at. That despite everything that connects us with the animal world and the created world in general, and that is part of recognizing, appreciating, and caring for God's good creation that He has made, there is a fundamental distinction between animals and human beings. We are not just the highest animals, the most developed animals, something like that. There is a fundamental gap between us and them. In a similar way, there's a fundamental gap between all of creation and God. Now, the gap between creation and God is infinitely great in kind. The gap between us and the animals, is smaller, but it is there, and it is a fundamental distinction. And so the good care for creation goes awry when it elevates creation to a level of importance equaling humanity. And so we see, extremely misplaced priorities in some environmental activism and other things. We live in a society. It is bizarre and absolutely wrong that we live in a society that places far greater value and protection on the life of animals than on the well-being of the infant in the womb. I mean, that is a tragic reversal. We should be absolutely caring for the lives of animals, treating animals in a humane way. It's good that we take that as seriously as we do, but it is bizarre to do that and neglect the far superior value of human life. And so this distinction is underlined by not only by a break that it goes on, it doesn't just include humanity with the animals, but then there is this moment of divine deliberation. So once again, a suggestion of plurality, not of plural gods. It's very clear about that, but of a communality in God. And of course, looking back, we see the Trinity resonating here. Then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. So you notice that it doesn't say then the gods said. That would be saying there are more than one God. There's not. But that God then has this plural. Let us make man in our image. There's a divine deliberation of sorts here. And this description to make man in our image after our likeness. So we come to what the fundamental characteristic, if we had to underline what is it that separates humanity from the animals, it is that man is made in the image of God. Now, there are all kinds of interpretive questions in these verses here, and we're not going to go into a lot of them. I think probably that this is a case of synonymous parallelism, that in our image and after our likeness are two different ways of saying the same thing, that the image of God and the likeness of God are not different things, but a way of saying that there is something fundamentally like God about human beings that is not true of the animals. And that underlines again the dignity of humanity, the difference we should place in our regard for human beings and for animals. And again, not because we should just trot over animals and not care. No, our creation. And in fact, he goes on to say, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. But as you go on, okay, dominion. But as you go on, you see that there is a nourishing role. So we are to care about the animals, part of it precisely because we are made in God's image. We are given by him a role to carry out, reflecting him, the good creator who cares for his creation. But with this distinction that we should never lose sight of between human beings and the animal world, that man is made in the image of God, and dogs and cats and tigers and elephants are not. When you come to further on in Genesis, when we come to Genesis chapter 9, this distinction is established as a basis for understanding the killing of human beings, murder, to be fundamentally morally different than the killing of animals. In Genesis chapter 9, God, who had previously authorized the eating of vegetable life for nourishment, now authorizes people to eat animals for nourishment as well. You can eat the moving things upon the earth. I give them to you for food. But then follows a distinction that while you can eat the animals for food, you shouldn't eat their blood. Um, you should recognize the life that God gives and the sacredness of that. But then it goes on to say that God is going to require an account for killing human life. He's going to require that from animals, even, that they are not to kill human life. But particularly, the attention is put on man. For from his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And so what it's saying there is that the image of God separating mankind from the animals establishes this sacred difference that while animals may be killed for food, humans, on the contrary, the murder is a crime, a capital crime in terms of absolute justice, and that this hard justice is validated, is justified on the basis of the fact that man is made in God's image. So the sacredness of human life needs to be taken seriously and is theologically grounded in us being fundamentally different from the other creatures that God has made. And this comes with the privilege and responsibility, it goes on there, of having dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock. So made like God in some particularly special way. And what that image and likeness is about, well, we'll move on to that in a future Tea-ology. But to wrap up today, as we look at this wonderful creation of humanity in the image of God, it underlines both the glory of mankind, but also the enormity of human sin. That creatures given such a wonderful privilege, that creatures made with a likeness of God, should then turn against the Creator. That is a true monstrosity. And so human sin in its darkness is shown in light of the glory of how we were made. But then, continuing, it underlines further the love of God, the wisdom of God, the power of God, our Redeemer, who has so loved the creatures made in his image, even when we turned away from him and took the creation he entrusted to us into this fall, into sin and rebellion. Even then, God has reached down to us for our rescue and redemption, and enacted this costly path of redemption, whereby the Son of God became man to rescue and deliver us. And so, once again, so many of these things, when we think about them enough, they reflect not only the goodness of what God has done, but the majesty of his love. So may the majesty of the love of God for you strengthen you as you go through your day. The Lord bless you in every way.